Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic. Let's do it. What's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you, and something that you've never told? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
I took an acquaintance to a known drug house and waited in my car. A couple scary-looking dudes surrounded my car and took me into the house. I was held at knife point and questioned for about an hour. They thought I was an undercover cop and had a wire on me. I was 16 back in the early 80s when it happened. I was hitchhiking as a teen and got picked up by a middle-aged man. We chatted along while he drove me home, and right before he dropped me off, he told me I should be glad he had his kid with him in the car. That was the absolute last time I got in a car with a stranger. I was sleeping in a hotel room, dreaming I saw a guy with his eyes closed, got scared for some reason and made myself wake up. When I woke up, the dream is gone, but the guy remains, only now his eyes are open, looking directly at me from behind the bed. We stare at each other before he slowly walks past a corner and is gone. I stood up, checked the door, locked, and examined every inch of my hotel room, but there was no one there. I don't believe in ghosts, and I know what sleep paralysis is, but I thought when I had sleep paralysis I would be, paralyzed. I could move, since I sat up in bed when I saw him. My girlfriend was sleeping beside me, so I just tried to fall asleep again, telling myself it wasn't real. I know it's sleep paralysis. When I tried to fall asleep, a gentle touch pushed me from the other side of the bed, not the side my girlfriend was sleeping. I ignored it and kept trying to sleep. Eventually I did. It's been with me ever since. Weirdest thing I ever experienced. In my mid-teens, I worked in a video store next door to a corner convenience store. One day it was mid-afternoon and I just finished my shift and I was between stores heading to get a drink. I heard it before I saw it. At the set of lights outside the store, a driver ran the red light and collided with another coming in the opposite direction. The other car spun and stopped across the road. The driver who ran the red light slammed into the store just down from the entrance to the corner store on the opposite side of the video store. The thing was, there was a bench seat outside the store right where we had crashed. On that bench was a young mother with her infant son in a pram. The mum was pinned under the car and screamed for her son. The child had been hit with such force that he had hit the wall on the opposite side of the store. I rushed in and held him just long enough to see the light leave his eyes. Once emergency services arrived, they wanted to move the car, but as the driver was drunk, he locked the doors and refused to get out. They smashed the back window and dragged him out. I still live with that memory from 35 years ago, and just recently moved to a house a block and a half away from where this happened. I've not told anyone that I was there with the infant. It's not a story I like to talk about. During my teens, I was home alone and finishing up chores. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Everything was calm, and I had some music playing quietly. As I'm doing the dishes, I heard a noise that sounds nasty and wet. The only way I can think to describe it is someone actively throwing up or choking on their vomit. I heard it directly behind me, so I whip around to see which one of my cats left me a surprise. None of my cats were in the kitchen until they filed in with my dog in a single line. None of them were in a hurry, but they did look anxious. They all went into the basement, and I was left upstairs, quietly fearing that someone was in the house. I searched the house high and low, but there were no signs of anything or anyone that could have been the source of the noise. I even checked the creepy attic space in my mom's room. Nothing. I should have found that reassuring, but it didn't alleviate my anxiety at all. I was honestly frustrated that I couldn't and wouldn't find an answer. I joined my pets in the basement and hugged my dog until my mom got home. I definitely didn't like to be alone in the kitchen after that. When I was a kid, about 11 or 12, my two buddies and I would ride our bikes all day around the block, for hours. We'd find trees to climb, beehives to hit, kid stuff. One day, on one of our laps around the block, we saw a new kid on the block, and he asked to join our cruise around. Sure, why not? At first, he told us simple stuff. His family moved here from South Korea. His brother owns a superbike. His younger brother goes to the same school as my sister. Whatever, basic stuff. But the more time we spent with him, the crazier his stories got. He went to an elite paintball school that was basically the military. He helped design Yu-Gi-Oh cards. His cousin is a literal ninja. Even at that age, I knew his stories were getting ridiculous. Anyway, one of these days, it was just me and the dude. His was 3 years older, by the way, and he invites me in his house to play video games, which I thought was interesting because the whole summer, he didn't want us to meet his parents. I get there, his parents weren't home. At some point, he invites me into his room. We're sitting in the bed looking at his super rare Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and he starts rubbing my leg. I scoot to the side and didn't think anything of it. I'm 12. He scoots closer and starts kissing my neck. What the f? I get up to leave, weirded out, and he grabs me by the wrist and pleads with me. He was just kidding him to stay. Again, I was 12, so I thought maybe it was a dumb joke. Moments later, he's forcibly pulling me in for a kiss, trying to flatten me out on the bed, rubbing me. It took every ounce of strength I could muster to get his face off of mine. A struggle ensues, and eventually I break free and run out of the house. I narrowly avoided what could have been a very, very dark situation. I told my two friends about how weird it was and what a freak he is, but being a 12-year-old, I didn't say anything to my parents. Stupid. We avoid this guy for months. He tries desperately to catch up with us all the time, but we literally run from him. Eventually, he waits for us on the corner of an intersection we have to pass, with his dad's pistol, saying in a manic, crying, slobbering rage he was going to kill all three of us. I never rode so fucking fast in my life. We did tell that to my friend's mom, and she called the police. I heard his parents put him in military school eventually, and was grounded basically for years. This guy was so crazy. When I ran into him like 8 years later, he started yelling at me with the same slobbering crying he did years before. Why did you do that? Military school sucks. I was grounded until I was 18. There are crazy fucking people in this world. He's one of only 3 people I've met that makes me think this world is a scary place. Some people really have darkness within them. Edit. This happened 25 years ago. Actually, let me make one small amendment as my memory comes back to me. He was waiting for us on the corner with a large, foot-long Bowie knife. When he couldn't catch our bikes on foot, he yelled at us. He'd get his dad's pistol. Also, I distinctly remember having very sore arms and chest the next day. I was pushing him so hard, I tore up my muscles. First time I was sore like that because I never worked out or exerted myself like that before. Was coming home from a bar one night and had to pass an alley less than a block to my house. A guy jumped out, grabbed my purse and pulled me into the alley. I was young and wasn't thinking straight, so I thought he wanted my purse and I had a lot of money in it, so I just grabbed onto it thinking I could pry it away from him. After a short struggle, I was able to grab my purse because he let go, but then he grabbed my arm and all of a sudden it hit me that I was in real trouble. I tried to get away, but he wouldn't let go, so finally I just lifted my foot and stomped on his toes as hard as I could with my stiletto heel. He let go, screaming in pain. I ran as fast as I could and got in the apartment. Always avoided that side of the street after that. It was the last pizza delivery for the night. I was closing delivery driver. I was working 2 jobs. It was a Friday night. I was pretty tired. I turned onto the main road. There were no cars that I saw when I turned. The road seemed really empty when I turned on it. All of a sudden, there was this big guy in a big black truck on my ass. I guess I had cut him off and didn't realize it. He road raged me, yelling at me with the pizza sign on my shitty car, riding next to me screaming at me like he was going to kill me for cutting him off. He must have been going 75 for him to ride up on me so fast for me not to see him. He chased next to me for at least 10 minutes. I kept screaming through my window that I didn't see him. It was the honest truth. I did not see his SUV until he was right up on me. I kept yelling I was sorry and didn't see him. He finally backed off, thought I was going to die by getting beaten, shot, or run off the road that night.
I live in an area where road rage is very common. I think it has something to do with impulse control. Ego has a huge part in it. And people that live without accountability or never really had any. But it seems to be the same personality type over and over again. And pickup trucks, that tracks. So anyway, be safe out there on the road. It's not worth getting angry over. Breathe, say some curse words, and move on. It'll be all right. Stay safe, guys.
I was 16 years old and just moved to a city from a small town. I had learned how to take the bus and was at a bus stop, waiting to go to the house of a friend I had met at my new school. A man approached me and asked me where I was going, and offered me a ride, as he was going that way too. I refused several times, but he was persistent. I was a small town girl and not socialized to say no to adults. I got in his truck. On the ride, he told me he was a locksmith. It turns out he was the locksmith who had recently worked on the doors of the apartment where my mom and I lived. As we were on the street where my friend lived, he stopped and asked if it was okay if he took some pictures of me. I got out of the truck and ran. I truly have never told anyone this because I realized what I was doing how foolish it was. I'm not positive what this was escalating to, but I know I'm incredibly lucky that nothing happened to me, especially with the knowledge that this man knew where I lived. Only a small thing compared to many of these stories, but when I was 18 and had moved into my first house with some mates and a sketchy older roommate, a friend of the older roommate came round one day looking for him. He was massive, buff, and had a very aggressive vibe. I had sat and smoked with him before, and he seemed to like me. I had since found out that he'd only recently come out of prison for assault, and this was the first time I'd seen him since finding out. He turned up very drunk and wanted to go somewhere to score. Some friends of his. Anyway, he insisted I come with him, and I was too young and green to refuse. He flagged down a taxi, and we went on a sort of tour by taxi. First place, he forced his way into a supposed friend's house and started assaulting him before leaving. He then decided to split, dragged me with him, and jumped in another taxi. Second place, he took me into some flats and literally kicked the door in looking for a mate with some drugs. Third place, he left me in the taxi while he went in. I had no idea what happened, but he was about 15 minutes, and I was terrified the whole time. In the end, we were heading somewhere else, and the taxi looped back through the town center. While stopped at a busy crossing, I was so scared, I made an excuse of needing to go and literally jumped out just as the car was setting off. I ran through town and didn't go home for 24 hours. I just walked around and went to food places. No one ever saw him again. Like I say, not a big thing compared to most of the actual, most terrifying things that ever happened. It was nearly 30 years ago, and it's still crystal clear and fresh. We were coming home from deployment riding on a C5 that was fully loaded. I was asleep, but was awakened when the plane just suddenly dropped. It felt like an eternity, and I was lifted out of my seat. There were not many people on the plane, so we had rows to ourselves, and we're laying down and not buckled in. After what felt like forever, I was suddenly thrown back in my seat while the plane lurched back up. My friend, who was across the aisle, and I just stared at each other, scared out of our minds and sweating. We had to divert to Thailand because of a possible overg on the aircraft. One of our fighter pilots, that was up in the cockpit at the time, was screaming at the pilot of the C-5. Apparently, he flew through a cloud. Our guy mentioned to him he should have flown around it, but the dude said, "Nah, we'll be alright." I've been absolutely terrified of flying since then. It was a couple of months ago. I had to spend the night at a hotel alone. It was me and around 50 more people. Most, if not all, were men, including the staff. I changed rooms twice because the doors didn't lock properly. At dinner time, I felt like I was being watched, and I was. Every time I looked around, I saw the big groups regarding me and whispering among themselves. I tried reading their lips. I only got to the words pretty, delicious, share, which I was convinced my anxious self was definitely about the food, until I got up and heard one of them say, "Follow her, find her room for later." I walked out of the hotel entirely, re-entered from the back and ran to my room. I locked my door and positioned furniture behind it, just in case the lock betrayed me. And then I laid under the bed, holding a tiny pocket knife I kept around. I tried busying myself with reading or playing a game on my phone. At around 1 to 2 a.m., the lights cut off, which caused me to freak out even more. I don't know why or what made me do it. I got up and left everything behind except my phone, ran to the first room I stayed at, and as I said, the doors didn't lock. The structure of the building allowed me to see the room, my stuff, and almost clearly. I kept an eye on it, even though it's dark and I can't see. About 5 minutes later, the lights come on, and I saw 9 or more guys in my room. My heart stopped for a moment, and I thanked my guts for protecting me. I watched them for what felt like forever, rummaging through my bags, bed, closet, and bathroom. I contemplated leaving everything behind, but my car keys were still in the room. When they finally felt, I sneaked back in to get my stuff and didn't even check out. I ran to my car and sped off. I didn't even know where I was going. I just felt the aching need to run, and I did. When I checked my bag for missing items, effers didn't take jewelry or money, but bras and panties. I'm just glad that I'm okay. My husband and I found one of our neighbors dead in her car. My husband tried to perform CPR while I called 911, but she was gone well before we found her. She apparently had a heart attack just as she opened her car door, which is the only reason we found her. The door was open when we left the community and was still open when we came back about 10 minutes later. Hours went by before someone found her. I keep visualizing her chest moving up and down as the firefighters try to save her before taking her to the hospital. Like, how do you bring that up in normal conversation? "Oh, what'd you do this weekend?" "I found a dead body, how about you?" No. I was driving along a highway at about 80 kph. It was night, and I had my family with me. Up ahead, there was a truck with its left turn signal on. No big deal. It was stopped. When all of a sudden, it was in my lane. It literally launched into my lane because it was stuck from behind by someone who didn't notice the signal or brake lights. I freaked out, and in the split second I thought about my wife and kids, and also panic swerved right and instantly left as I remembered that the ditches here were 8 to 10 feet deep. How we remained upright, I still have no idea. I do know that on our first swerve, 2 wheels left the ground, because when they slammed back down, I thought we had hit the truck. In the end, my family was completely unscathed. The truck people were sore and shaken up, and while I don't remember much about the rear ender, I do remember them walking around and apologizing. Walking home from a friend's house at 1 a.m., this is around 1987. Only a half a mile or so walk in the neighborhood I grew up in. No street lamps or sidewalks. A truck, when I was about halfway home, comes racing down the street. Being frightened, I hop into a yard. The truck stops right next to me. We're about 20 feet apart. The driver of the truck takes this long drag of a cigarette. I'm frozen like a deer in headlights. I suddenly hear the faint sound of truck doors start to open. My fight or flight reflexes kick in, and I run holy hell to the person's house of the yard I was standing in. Scream and bang on the windows and front door. Light of the house turns on, and so does what seemed to be the entire street. Every damn time I'm walking in the dark, I see the drag of that cigarette. We used to go sneak into a huge reservoir to go night swimming when we were in high school. It was private property, so we had to park far away and then walk down this long, dark dirt road that took it down to the actual reservoir itself. The one night we decided to go down there about 11 p.m. in the summertime, we were walking back to our cars when suddenly ahead of us, we saw the shadowy figure walking toward us in the dark. We all freaked out and took a right turn detour right through the woods that led up to another road. Never been so scared in my life when we were running through those woods to get away from whoever was coming down that dirt road in the dark. I was 15 years old, and me and my friend had snuck out to meet these 2 older boys. It was around 1 or 2 a.m., and we walked 2 hours to a park because they didn't want to sneak us in, so we agreed. We got there a bit earlier than them, so we just sat on some swings. Behind the swings were a large forest-type place, trees and bushes, and a small stone pathway leading into it. We heard some rustling in the bushes behind us. Naturally, we thought it was the boys, so my friend calls out their names. No response. We do it again, and still don't get a response. At this point, I was shitting myself. I was so scared, and it was dead silent. We heard mumbling coming from those same bushes. Some man pops out, and he looks about 30 to 40 years old. He comes toward us, makes conversation, and we both are absolutely terrified and scared for our lives. His eyes are also extremely red, and he seemed under the influence. We keep him distanced for about 10 to 15 minutes, trying to keep talking and being polite so nothing happens. The boys eventually arrive and are freaked out. They say something to him and try creating as much distance between us as possible. The 2 of them booked an Uber for me and my friend home, but safe to say, I have never and will never sneak out again. Never told? It would have been my brain mistaking something mundane for something really scary in a way that was more embarrassing than funny. For me to have not told anyone, I talk more than anything else. The scariest shit I've told? You still wouldn't have heard it though, so I'll share again. Okay. Most inexplicable to this point, it changed my worldview. Scary. This weird experience that happened to me in college, but was simultaneously witnessed by my then girlfriend, so I'm 100% confident this weird thing actually happened in a concrete manner. We were walking hand in hand toward our weekly date, walking down the town plaza on a Friday night. This guy was up ahead. The plaza sidewalk was 15 to 20 feet wide, so he was up ahead 20-ish feet, but he was going to be about 10 feet to the side when we passed by. He was mad, like angrier than I've ever seen. His veins were bulging in somewhat dark from almost 20 feet away, while he was yelling at someone over the phone. We were starting to pass by him, about 10 feet to the side of us, when I kind of glanced from my periphery and saw this thing shoot up from him and toward me. By thing, what I mean is that the weird CGI water-looking tendril-shaped mass of distorted reality. It's really hard to describe because it just didn't look like something from reality. People have brought up those things from Donnie Darko when I've mentioned it before. It actually looked a lot like that, but it came out of some raging guy and shot toward my ear, and I kind of felt it. It was like that cotton crunching sound, and this weird feeling of almost static resistance. But I saw it coming, so when it shot for my ear, I jumped and flung my shoulder up to my ear reflexively. The guy and I made eye contact then, and he looked so weirded out. Which would make sense if he just saw me jump for no reason as we passed him. But for the life of me, I feel like he saw it too. He wasn't raging after that, just quiet. But how I knew I didn't just make it up was because my girlfriend turned to me after and said, "You saw it too?" And said she thought I didn't until I reacted to it. When she saw it reach me, she was on the other side of me and apparently saw it as solid black, whereas I saw it as black but as like almost visually like jelly. I could see through it, but stuff looked differently, distorted through it. I thought this was going to be the beginning of an Odd Thomas-like journey, but nothing else like that ever happened. So glad someone else was there to validate it. It was a real thorough. When I was 3, I'm a girl, I was over at my maternal grandparents' place. My grandmother was asleep and my mom, aunts, and uncle were out. It was just me and my grandfather. We were in my room while I was just playing with toys. He looked at me and then looked around, slowly inching closer, putting his hand on my thigh above my pants. Being the naive, on the spectrum 3-year-old I was, I hugged him tight because I thought he was pulling me into a hug. He hugged back, but then his hand slipped under the waistband of my pants. Then the main door opened, and he retracted his hand. I didn't understand, but somehow it felt just wrong even when I was 3. I only understood when I was 7. Then I slowly distanced myself. I'm 14 now, but last year, when I visited them again, it was just like last time, only he was making me bread and jam. He said words I can't get out of my head. "You know, blank, I can take better care of you than your parents can." The way he said it sent shivers down my spine, and I distanced even more. I told my mom, but she took it as a joke and playfully got offended. He died in July, and I haven't told anyone about this because my mother is still grieving. I remember praying for my family's burdens to go on him before, and I guess the Lord does reply. I was so shocked when I first heard, but I'm secretly glad this happened before he did this to my 3-year-old girl cousin. Me and my squad were ambushed in Chora Valley, Afghanistan in 2008. For a short while, it did not seem we would be able to make it out. We drove straight into it. Semicircle ambush, only way out was rear. RPGs going off, rounds whirring past and impacting ground around us. I hadn't even noticed that our group of 7, 5 had peed themselves, including myself. We were able to extract with 1 wounded by some miracle. The F-16 finished the job for us. When we went for BDA, we secured 9 enemy corpses. They had us dead to rights. All of us should have been smoked. To this day, only my wife knows. I'm a white American woman in my 20s. I spent 5 years on and off teaching ESL in China. My first year teaching was 2006. At the time, it wasn't unheard of to see a white person in a major city, but I was uncommon enough that people would often ask to take a picture with me. It feels weird to have strangers ask to take a picture with you when you're not a celebrity, but I didn't really mind. People were always nice and polite, except once. I was alone, walking in a shopping district. It's a little touristy, but plenty of locals shop there too. It was daytime, lots of people were around. I felt completely safe. 2 young men, probably college-aged, approached me. Sometimes people want to chat a little first to try out their English skills, but people who are shy or don't speak English just come up and say, "Picture?" or just show you their camera. These guys didn't seem to speak English well. One of them said, "Picture?" and I said yes. One guy stepped back to take the picture. Usually, in this scenario, the person just stands beside me. Most Chinese people weren't very touchy with strangers. Not this guy. He unabashedly put his arm around me and pulls me really close, pressed close, hip to hip. This still didn't bother me. I chuckled internally and thought that he was probably going to go tell his friends that I was his American girlfriend. At the time, there were some people who viewed having a foreign girlfriend as social collateral. Him lying to his friends about a photo of me was amusing to me, not distressing. I can't control what people do when I'm not around, and it doesn't affect me. So, his friend took several pictures in quick succession. Usually afterwards, the person thanks me, says goodbye, and goes on their way. This ass turns to me, pulls me in closer, and leans about halfway down like he's waiting for me to kiss him. I shouted "no" loudly, pushed him away hard, and both of them burst out laughing and ran away. The laughter was the worst part. Part of the social collateral of having a foreign girlfriend is a belief that we're very promiscuous. A picture of us standing close together could imply a sexual relationship, and a picture of us kissing even more so. He most likely believed I'd be totally down to make out with him in public if he just let it be known he was willing. It's not the most dramatic story, but I left there feeling very dirty and very unsafe. I think I stayed home for like a week after that. During my time there, I had people pickpocket me, I was robbed, I was overcharged, I was lied to, my boyfriend was assaulted, but none of those things shook me as badly as that dumb punk trying to get me to kiss him. I hope he showed them those pictures to his friends and they laugh at him.